is considered insolvent when liabilities exceed assets, or the equity we say is negative. Then the business is insolvent. Now, elementary finance, I'm coming back to around your question. Cash determines liquidity. Liquidity means essentially the ability to convert an asset into cash. An asset is more liquid if it's easier to sell close to its price. Right now, very liquid are dollars. They are cash. Gold is relatively liquid. And illiquid is stuff that's highly customized. My shirt and other stuff is. In other words, remember how we said liquidity is essentially nearness to cash. What we discussed when we discuss money is how marketable and how easy the asset is. In other words, rice is very liquid. Oil is very liquid. Gasoline is very liquid. Electricity is relatively easy to sell. In other words, it's the ability to convert quickly to cash, and cash is the most liquid of all assets. Okay? So, cash, and we say reserves determine, okay, I'm running out of space, but I'll try again. Let's get back to answering your questions, which are important finance questions that I was planning to teach in the second half, but we might as well get on early. So, the two primary characteristics of stable and sustainable commercial banks are liquidity and solvency. Liquidity is determined by the size of the reserves. Which equal cash and, pay attention, Fed funds. I'll just shorten it to FF, Fed funds. That's already, I wrote it somewhere, right? So that's what determines liquidity. And solvency is determined by capital, which is exactly the same word for equity, which is affected by profits and losses. Okay? And now we get to your question is, losses are determined for a bank mostly by bad loans or bad debt. And profits are determined by, as I already wrote, interest, loaning up. Okay, let's write this again, the step. Interest, by loaning up. Okay. So, banks must maintain liquidity in order to survive, and must maintain solvency. A loss in liquidity and possibly becoming illiquid is called liquidity risk. Liquidity risk is the risk or the probability that liquidity will drop dangerously low and endanger the survival of the bank or financial institution or any other business. Okay, it could be any commercial business. And this one is called solvency risk. Is that the risk that bad debt and rising losses will reduce equity and turn eventually the financial system, bank insolvent. Okay? So, bad debts affect solvency. They affect liquidity very little in the sense they affect liquidity that you expected the loan to be paid and the loan wasn't paid. Okay? So, you don't have money coming in. You don't have a cash inflow. Okay? Your reserves don't increase. Okay? But when you don't get paid, the reserves don't go down. So, your reserves remain the same when you don't get paid. Okay? But your equity falls. And to maintain the system stable, they say liquidity risk is lower with required rates of, required reserve ratio of 10% or more. Okay. Reduce solvency risk. They have now is called a brand new name for banks only. It's called capital ratio. But in other businesses and in financial statement analysis, it's called equity ratio. Okay? Equity ratio. And usually is about 10%. Sometimes they require 8, sometimes they require 10, sometimes 12. Is good enough for today? On Friday,